My name's Danielle Phillips. As Carl mentioned, I'm going to be talking to you about communication, and you're all thinking, oh, right, that's not a technical evening, that's something a bit different, hopefully, and hopefully it will be. The intent of this is really to have a bit of a conversation and share some of my experience with you as to how I've been involved in communicating a big safety strategy. So without further ado, I shall attempt to share my screen. The presentation is all about talking about how we create a safety culture at a company called Toll Group, which is a logistics company based out of Australia, but has a global footprint. And it was sort of 7, 8, 9 years ago, I was working there as the head of communication and employee engagement for working at the corporate head office. So my role had a broad remit, and the safety communication and staff engagement within safety came under that. So I just want to sort of talk you through what we did and how we did it, and give you some ideas as to the sorts of things that we did then, about how we sort of built a safety culture. And please forgive me, this is not a teaching you how to suck eggs thing. I know you've all got safety as part of what you do, and so this is just about showing you what we did, and then I'd like to have a conversation at the end of it, answer any questions that you might have about things that we did, things that you're doing, ideas, and sort of sharing some best practice. So let's dive in. So I'm, as you might have guessed from my accent, not a Yorkshire native. I'm based up in the northeast, so still relatively close, in County Durham, which looks like that on a nice day. Hasn't looked like that for a while. Anyway, so that's County Durham. So that's Durham city centre. For those of you who haven't visited, please come and visit us when we can. That's where I met Carl, your chairman. So Carl and I have recently just completed our MBA programme at the university. We've completed it, Carl. High five. We can finally be grateful that we've got no more of that to do. So during the course of that study, we talked about what we do, and Carl said, oh, it might be good for you to come along and speak to the Institute about communication and engagement. So fortunately, here I am. Sorry, everyone. I hope I don't bore you to tears. Let's hope not. So hopefully in a few months' time, Carl and I will be wearing our cap and gown and graduating from Durham University. While I'm not studying, I run my own communications consultancy called Inside Out. And the idea of that is that we create brand advocates from within the business. So work with lots of different organisations of all shapes and sizes to help really get your employers to understand what they're there to do it effectively, and then spruik that good news story externally. So effectively, they're your internal marketeers. And that's why culture plays such a big part, because it's no longer just words on the page. It's felt and lived and breathed by the people who work there. So that's why embedding something like safety is a cultural aspect rather than just a post, putting a poster up and hoping for the best, is so important. And that's what leads you to really have a successful safety culture. So as I mentioned, I worked for this company, Toll Group, which is head office is in Melbourne. So some nice pictures of Melbourne, which again, until quite recently, has looked a bit different to this. Not very many people fill in the MCG these days. But that's, we lived and loved living there for quite some time, and had the opportunity to work for this fantastic company, Toll Group. So Toll, as I mentioned, is, and certainly was then and remains, the Asia Pacific's leading provider of logistics. So that is a multimodal organisation that provides logistics in all different shapes and sizes. So as you can see, there's a few different modes of transport here, but I mean, really from contract logistics, managing large warehouses, through to managing offshore oil and gas supply lines and facilities up in Asia, from PUDs to motorbike couriers to aircraft, all sorts, everything you can imagine in between. And, as you might also imagine, a few random businesses like print businesses and things like that. So whatever communication we did had to kind of transcend this large organisation that did so many things, and people who worked there had a breadth of skills and talents. So there are 45,000 employees who were working there at the time that I was, and of those, they were based in about 55 countries, speaking about, I think it was 36 predominant languages, and in 1,200 sites. So it was a huge logistics challenge just to even reach the staff with any kind of communication that we did. And obviously translation had to be accounted for, and local, nuance and things like that had to be thought through. So it wasn't a straightforward process, but that's what made it fun. So that's the kind of context of the organisation. Huge player in Australia. I think, Adrian, you gave away in your accent that you may be from Australia, so you might have heard of this company before. But in the ASX and the FTSE 100 equivalent there, it was a listed company trading within the top 100. So a big known household name. And so I started when the guy on the left of my screen, Paul Little, the guy with the light grey suit and little hair, was the MD, and he was part of a management buyout of the company in the 80s. And so he'd been in the organisation for about 25 years and had really made his mark. And the other guy, the slightly younger guy in the darker suit on the right, he, at the time, Brian Kruger, was the CFO. And when Paul stepped down, Brian then went into the MD's role. And so Brian had seriously big shoes to fill in terms of Paul's legacy, and obviously wanted to create his own legacy and reason for taking the role and things like that. And so very quickly, Brian worked out that he wanted to instill some new values in the organisation. And one of the values he wanted to live and to breathe was that of safety. He come from, I think, Blue Scope Steel and BHP Billiton, so similar heavy industries to what you'd be used to, and was very much aware of the risks associated with working in that way and working in that sort of field. And I'd obviously had to make some pretty awful phone calls that none of us want to have to make to loved ones about injury and death of people when they're at work. And so he was he wasn't quite passionate. He was absolutely passionate about the need to instill a safety culture within Toll. And it wasn't that Toll didn't value safety at the time. It was that the company had grown quite quickly and through about 55 acquisitions over that 25-year period. And as many of you will have experienced, acquisitions don't always naturally fit and get well absorbed into the company. The cultures often clash and things like that. So there was a real opportunity to kind of galvanize the organization around some really strong values. And the value of safety was something that everyone could get involved in, get on board with, because it made sense and it was something that was personal. So that was sort of Brian's goal. And Brian came over to my desk one day and said, right, I want you to be involved in this. So where do we start? And I said, let's have a chat. So there was a kind of crack team of myself, the head of safety, and a couple of his team who tried to work out how we could build a safety culture. And naturally, we don't do that overnight. So it took a bit of time. So let's have a look at how we did that. So the idea was to have this thing of safety first. So safety would become the most important value and the biggest thing in the organisation. Nothing was to be done if it wasn't safe, and in fact was to be stopped if it wasn't safe. So we had a few challenges that we had to deal with. We have talked about the global audience and the complexities of the organisation and the sort of not quite complete sort of integration of various business entities. So some businesses that have been acquired still very much had their own identity. So we did things like we rolled out a single uniform for the whole business, which was huge. And that gave us an opportunity to create a standard there for safety so that everyone wore the same PPE, everyone had the same high quality, high vis and boots and everything else that they needed. So that sort of helped there. Another challenge was understanding the different, what safety meant in different jurisdictions. So I'm sure you've all seen, images, and you may have seen firsthand how goods are moved in places like India, in that you might just load your rickshaw with your things that you need and move them to where they need to go. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is a cultural norm. So to try and instill a very different approach to safety in some of these jurisdictions took a slightly different approach and made that a bit challenging. We wanted anything that we did to be incredibly inclusive and accessible. So that meant you needed to be able to see yourself in any of the visuals, any of the collateral that we produced. And by that, I meant, didn't just need to be kind of white Melburnian people and men predominantly, and needed to be representative of that business in its entirety. And from the accessibility perspective, needs to be understood in the language that you spoke where possible. So that was a significant challenge. And then it needs to be real and believable. And I think, it's one thing for the management to say safety is really important around here, but you sort of need to see it being proven to believe it. And I think, we're talking to quite a pragmatic audience here who, they're not, don't necessarily believe the corporate spin, and they want to see, what's actually going to be done to make a difference. So we needed to convince people with some real believable stuff. And then had to change some long-held beliefs in the sector. So I think, it won't be a surprise to you that the trucking sector, particularly within Australia, didn't have great reputation at one point in time. It was lots of, should we say, allegations around how individuals fueled themselves to work long hours. So it was a case of we needed to change some perceptions both within and outside of the business, and really just instill a bit of trust, I think, in this could be done. So that was just a few challenges to work through there. And time obviously was a challenge too. It needed to be done yesterday, so we obviously have to work at speed with these things. But the opportunity was significant. So the idea that you'd have a safe place to work, I think for some people in some of those jurisdictions was revolutionary and fabulous, which would in turn turn us into an employer of choice, both within the Australian context and more broader, further afield. And again, it wasn't that we weren't, it was just that this was about elevating that brand reputation and potentially creating that ripple effect within the community as well, so that it was known what we did. It wasn't just a hope. It was a kind of, I always had this vision that if you saw one of those green trucks on the road, that you would know automatically that was going to be someone who was driving safely, knew what they were doing. They weren't going to swerve out in front of you. You sort of had the confidence to overtake them with ease. And that to me meant that we would then sort of instill that within the community, that faith and trust. I think it sort of was important that we brought together the business under this sort of common goal. Again, through the way that I'd grown with the acquisitions and things, it was important that they all had a sense of collegiate kind of togetherness, which they hadn't previously had. And then to have an opportunity to become a sector leader. So in terms of our revenue and turnover and the sort of volumes that we did, absolutely a sector leader. But could we be a sector leader in this space? I think the mining companies in Australia had really owned safety. They were phenomenal at doing this because, as you're aware, you have to be. But transport logistics just hadn't yet got there. One other firm was doing good work. And there was an opportunity there to really lead the way and then influence others in the industry, but also the wider community, which I think was an important thing. As a significant road user, it was a chance to sort of explain how, or to demonstrate how the road could be used safely and how we could share the road together. Obviously a point of differentiation for customers, which is obviously a really important thing. And then this idea of being a good corporate citizen and doing the right thing, sort of using your expertise to the benefit of the broader society. So what do we do? So we decided that we'd go with this tagline: think safe, act safe, be safe. And that became the cornerstone of the whole campaign and is still the tagline that's used today for safety within the organisation. I don't need to explain what it means. You can very much get that from there. So in order to sort of roll this out, we decided to launch a global Stop for Safety. which was really, I suppose, our opportunity to get everyone to just stand still and think about this thing for one time, where we'd never done anything like this before. So that felt very fresh and it felt very different. And it also sent the message very strongly that we cared about this enough so that we would stop everything that we were doing and we would give people the time off what they were doing paid to to show that safety was really important and serious. So I think it was probably February time in 2013, we launched our first Stop for Safety. And within a 24-hour period, we asked every single one of the 1,200 sites to stop for an hour and to make sure that every shift got the opportunity to do this. And we sent them all a pack, which had in there a DVD. Yes, it was a while ago, so we still did DVDs then. And that DVD was available in the languages that they spoke. So I think we translated into something like 15 languages with subtitles. We then had an exercise in there, which was a chance for them to then watch the video, then have a conversation as a team and talk about what they'd seen, what they'd felt, what they'd kind of learned from that. And then to make a pledge as a team as well around what they were going to do differently. So the whole idea of this first Stop for Safety was everyone has the right to go home safely. And we tried to think about what we could do personally to ensure that that would happen. And it was something that was applicable to anyone, regardless of the kind of role that they performed in the organisation. So from everyone who was in, from the admin team and the head office right through to the stevedores and the pilots, there was an opportunity for everyone to think about that in the context of their own roles. And then we gave out some posters and some merchandise. And the merchandise, still got one actually here, was a bit soppy, but it was a little photo frame that we gave out, which says, "My reason for going home safely." It was to put a picture of, your loved one or something that you enjoyed doing in there. And we also give out little key rings as well, so you could put them on your truck keys. It was just that constant reminder of why you were doing what you were doing. And it was hopefully with the intent of winning over the hearts and minds. This is just some of the collateral. This is some of what we did. So you can see over here, these people showing their reasons for going home safely. This is the poster campaign. So we actually went to Thailand, Singapore, and India and took photos and filmed the video that you're soon going to see, as well as, I think, 3 states within Australia, to get a cross-section of the types of the people that worked for the organisation. And while that sounds really extravagant, it wasn't. It was done on a shoestring, but it was done because it was so important that people could see themselves in this and they could see their facilities, or they had the sense that this was something that was not just something coming from head office, but actually was about them. And that had a huge impact on the success of the campaign. Right, now you are going to see a video, so let's just click into that. So that was just a little view of the video there that we had, and the video was actually in 3 parts. That was the sort of the start of it, and then we had another part which was a story of one of our drivers. He'd had a significant accident, and I've got that to show you as well. But I just wanted to sort of break it into bits to sort of explain why we did what we did. So this first part was to kind of get everyone to realize that this is for them. So hopefully most people have seen them or someone that they could associate with in that picture and in that short clip I just showed you.